"Mom, they won't let you deploy anymore," her daughter had said during their last call. "You're too old for this." 2 weeks later, when Lieutenant Sarah Torres and her unit faced impossible odds, her too-old mother would eliminate 43 enemies and prove that maternal instinct is the deadliest weapon in any arsenal. Meet Master Sergeant Rachel Torres, 42 years old, with weathered hands that had pulled triggers for 2 decades and eyes that had seen more combat than most soldiers experience in entire careers. For 20 years, she had been one of the Army's most effective snipers, but institutional policy had forced her into a training role because someone decided that age mattered more than experience. Rachel's relationship with military service was complicated by the fact that her daughter had followed her into the Army, despite Rachel's attempts to discourage her from combat roles. Lieutenant Sarah Torres, 23 years old, commanded an infantry platoon with the same determination that had defined her mother's career. The tension between them wasn't about love or respect. It was about fear that Rachel couldn't express and independence that Sarah needed to establish. Their last phone conversation 2 weeks earlier had ended with words that both of them regretted, but neither knew how to take back. "Mom, you need to accept that your combat days are over," Sarah had said with the certainty of youth that hasn't learned how quickly circumstances can change. "You're 42. The Army has age limits for good reasons." Rachel had wanted to argue that experience mattered more than reflexes, that wisdom compensated for declining physical capabilities, and that 20 years of survival proved her methods worked better than youthful aggression. But she had simply said, "Stay safe, mija. I love you." Rachel's forced transition to training duties had been professionally devastating and personally humiliating. At 42, she had more combat experience than any 3 instructors combined, but institutional policy treated age as automatic disqualification regardless of actual capability. Her background revealed why mandatory retirement felt like institutional betrayal rather than reasonable policy. Rachel had grown up in a military family where service wasn't just profession, it was identity that defined everything about who you were and what you valued. Her father, Command Sergeant Major Miguel Torres, had been a ranger who served until mandatory retirement at age 60 forced him out. He had taught Rachel that warriors didn't become less effective with age. They became more efficient, more patient, and more deadly through accumulated experience. "Mija," he had told her when she enlisted at 18, "young soldiers have speed and strength. Old soldiers have patience and wisdom. The deadliest warriors are the ones who survive long enough to combine both." Rachel's 20-year career had validated her father's philosophy. Her confirmed kill count exceeded 200 enemy combatants, eliminated through patience and precision that young snipers couldn't match. She had survived situations that killed operators with better physical capabilities but less tactical wisdom. But none of that mattered to personnel policies written by administrators who had never faced combat situations where experience was the difference between survival and catastrophe. At 42, Rachel was considered too old regardless of her perfect mission record and combat effectiveness that exceeded younger operators. Her transition to training duties had been professionally necessary but personally devastating. Rachel taught advanced sniper techniques to students who had the physical capabilities she was supposedly losing, but none of the hard-earned wisdom that made her more effective than ever. "Torres is an excellent instructor," evaluations read. But her insistence that experience compensates for declining physical capabilities sends problematic messages to students about age-related performance limitations. Recommend emphasis on youth and peak physical conditioning as primary qualifications for combat operations. Rachel had accepted her new role with professional grace while privately believing that the military was making terrible mistakes by forcing out experienced operators based on arbitrary age limits rather than actual performance capabilities. The mission that would validate her beliefs began with intelligence reports that seemed designed to create maximum maternal terror. Sarah's platoon had been conducting routine patrol operations when they encountered enemy forces in numbers that turned standard engagement into potential massacre. Lieutenant Sarah Torres and 38 soldiers were surrounded by over 200 enemy fighters in terrain that provided natural defensive advantages for attackers while limiting options for defenders. Standard quick reaction force protocols couldn't reach them before their ammunition ran out and positions were overrun. Rachel was conducting training exercises when she received notification that Sarah's unit was in contact and facing catastrophic casualties. The official briefing emphasized that rescue operations were being coordinated, but the tactical situation made immediate intervention impossible. Master Sergeant Torres. Colonel Morrison informed her with professional sympathy that barely masked his concern. "Your daughter's unit is surrounded. We're coordinating response, but the enemy has positioned themselves to make conventional rescue extremely difficult. Rachel looked at the tactical maps showing Sarah's position and the enemy forces surrounding her. 20 years of combat experience allowed her to read situations that administrators couldn't understand. Sarah's platoon had maybe 4 hours before they ran out of ammunition and options. "Sir," Rachel said with calm that concealed maternal terror, "I know that terrain. I operated there during my 3rd deployment. There's an infiltration route that enemy forces won't be covering because they don't believe anyone could approach from that direction." Morrison studied Rachel with expression that mixed professional respect with institutional limitations. "Torres, you're not cleared for combat operations. Age restrictions are going to get my daughter killed if you prioritize policy over results." Rachel interrupted with intensity that Morrison had never heard from her during training operations. "Sir, I can reach her position and provide sniper support that will keep her alive until rescue forces arrive." Morrison faced the hardest decision of his command career. Rachel was technically prohibited from combat operations based on age policies that he was required to enforce. But she was also the most experienced sniper in his command, and her daughter was about to die along with 38 other soldiers if conventional approaches were the only options considered. "Torres, if you do this and survive, you'll face disciplinary action for violating deployment restrictions." Rachel was already gathering equipment that she had maintained, despite not being authorized to use it operationally. "Sir, if I don't do this and Sarah dies, disciplinary action will be the least of my concerns." What followed was the most emotionally intense mission of Rachel's 20-year career. She infiltrated enemy territory using routes and techniques that younger operators had never learned, moving through terrain that military doctrine considered impassable for someone her age. Rachel's infiltration took 6 hours of movement through hostile territory where any mistake would result in detection and death. But her experience allowed her to read terrain signs that younger soldiers would miss, finding paths that weren't on maps but existed for those who understood how landscape naturally created concealment. By 1400 hours, Rachel had established a sniper position overlooking the area where Sarah's platoon was defending against enemy assault waves that were systematically destroying their defensive capabilities. Through her scope, Rachel could see her daughter directing defensive fire, while ammunition levels dropped towards 0. Rachel's first shot eliminated an enemy commander who was coordinating assault waves against Sarah's position. The suppressed rifle provided no indication of where the shot originated, creating confusion among enemy fighters who suddenly faced invisible threats. Her 2nd through 10th shots systematically eliminated enemy heavy weapons crews who were providing suppressive fire that kept Sarah's platoon pinned down. Each kill was calculated to maximize tactical impact while remaining undetected by enemy forces, who were beginning to realize they faced more than just the surrounded platoon. "Mom?" Sarah's voice crackled across the tactical radio frequency that Rachel was monitoring. "Is that you?" Rachel smiled despite the desperate tactical situation. Sarah had recognized her mother's distinctive shooting pattern, the methodical precision that eliminated threats in sequence that created maximum disruption with minimum ammunition expenditure. "Focus on your defensive perimeter, Lieutenant," Rachel transmitted with professional tone that concealed maternal relief at hearing her daughter's voice. "I'll handle the external threats." Rachel's 11th through 20th kills targeted enemy fighters who were preparing for final assault that would overrun Sarah's position. Her shooting was so precise that she could eliminate threats while minimizing risk to friendly forces who were positioned dangerously close to enemy formations. The psychological impact on enemy forces was devastating. They had believed they were overwhelming a trapped platoon with nothing but time working against defenders. Instead, they found themselves being systematically destroyed by someone whose position they couldn't locate and whose shooting they couldn't counter. Rachel's 21st through 30th kills came during the most desperate phase of the engagement. Sarah's platoon was down to final magazines of ammunition when Rachel's precision fire broke the enemy's assault momentum and created opportunities for defenders to reorganize. "All units, this is Ghost," Rachel transmitted using her old call sign that Sarah hadn't heard in years. "I'm providing overwatch for defensive positions. Conserve ammunition and let me handle long-range threats." Sarah's response carried emotions that professional military bearing couldn't completely suppress. "Ghost, understood. Defensive positions are holding." Rachel's 31st through 40th kills eliminated enemy fighters who were attempting to withdraw and regroup for coordinated assault that would overwhelm both the surrounded platoon and the sniper who was protecting them. Her tactical awareness allowed her to predict enemy movements and intercept them with devastating accuracy. By 1600 hours, Rachel had fired 40 shots and eliminated 40 enemy combatants, while Sarah's platoon maintained defensive positions that should have been overrun hours earlier. The enemy offensive was collapsing as fighters faced someone whose experience and maternal motivation created capabilities that exceeded anything they could counter. Rachel's 41st through 43rd kills eliminated the final enemy leaders who were trying to coordinate withdrawal under fire. When the shooting stopped, 43 enemy fighters were dead, and Sarah's platoon was secure until quick reaction forces could reach their position. "Ghost, this is Lieutenant Torres," Sarah transmitted with voice that mixed professional relief with personal emotion. "Enemy forces are withdrawing. Defensive position is secure. Thank you." Rachel looked through her scope at the tactical situation that had transformed from certain massacre into miraculous survival. "Lieutenant, maintain defensive perimeter until QRF arrival. I'll continue overwatch." Quick reaction forces reached Sarah's position at 1800 hours, finding a platoon that should have been destroyed but was instead secure because someone had decided that a mother's love mattered more than age restrictions. When Rachel returned to base the following morning, she found Colonel Morrison waiting with expression that mixed professional admiration with institutional confusion about how to handle a situation that violated policies while saving 39 lives. "Torres, you violated direct orders, exceeded authorized operational parameters, and conducted combat operations despite age restrictions that specifically prohibited your deployment." Rachel stood at attention, prepared to accept consequences that mattered far less than her daughter's survival. "Yes, sir. I understand I'll face disciplinary action." Morrison studied Rachel for a long moment before responding. "You'll also receive the Silver Star for actions that saved 39 lives through tactical excellence that proved age restrictions are institutional stupidity when they prevent our most experienced warriors from operating." 3 days later, Rachel was formally recognized for her actions, while personnel policies regarding age restrictions came under review from commanders who recognized that experience sometimes mattered more than physical capabilities. Sarah visited her mother's quarters the evening after the award ceremony. The conversation they needed to have couldn't be delayed any longer. "Mom, I'm sorry," Sarah said quietly. "I told you that you were too old for combat. You proved that experience and determination matter more than age ever could." Rachel pulled her daughter into an embrace that expressed everything words couldn't capture. "Mija, you weren't wrong about my age. You were just wrong about what age means for warriors who refuse to quit." The after-action reports from Rachel's mission became case studies, examined by personnel commands, reconsidering policies that forced out experienced operators based on age rather than capability. Her 43 consecutive kills under desperate conditions validated arguments that wisdom and experience could exceed youthful physical advantages. 6 months later, age restrictions for special operations personnel were revised to emphasize capability rather than chronological age. Master Sergeant Rachel Torres was offered return to operational status with her choice of assignments. Today, Sergeant Major Rachel Reaper Torres runs programs that integrate experienced operators into advisory roles where their wisdom enhances rather than replaces younger personnel. Her daughter, Captain Sarah Torres, serves in the same theater where her mother's experience and maternal instinct saved her life. Rachel's philosophy, validated through impossible success driven by maternal desperation, has become guidance for military personnel policies. Age measures time, not capability. Experience is the advantage that only survivors accumulate, and the deadliest warriors are often the ones who've lived long enough to know why young operators die. Her advocacy has changed how the military considers mandatory retirement policies, emphasizing performance over chronological age. Operators who might have been forced out based on birth dates now continue serving based on capabilities that experience enhanced rather than diminished. Have you ever been told you were too old for something important, only to prove that experience and determination matter more than age? Rachel's story reminds us that the most dangerous limitations are the ones we accept about ourselves, based on arbitrary numbers rather than actual capabilities. The military learned that forcing out experienced warriors based on age creates gaps that youthful capabilities can't fill. Sometimes the most effective operators are the ones who've survived long enough to accumulate wisdom that makes them more dangerous, not less. If you believe that experience can overcome any physical limitation and that maternal love is the most powerful motivation in any arsenal, share this story. Because somewhere, Someone is being told they're too old for their dreams, not knowing that age is just a number when desperation and experience combine. Rachel Torres didn't just eliminate 43 enemies and save her daughter's unit. She proved that age restrictions are institutional cowardice disguised as policy. Sometimes the deadliest warriors are the ones who've lived long enough to know exactly why they're still dangerous. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this.